Speaking of right now, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is in Germany to meet with troops and senior military leaders. He's going to avoid a workout session.
This is his first foreign trip as Defense Secretary. He will also travel to Belgium and Poland to meet with NATO allies about the Russia-Ukraine war and U.S. funding for military aid.
Lucas Tomlinson is live in Germany with the very latest on Secretary Hegseth's movements. Good morning, Lucas.
Good afternoon, Carly. Good afternoon, guys, from Stuttgart, Germany, where Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, as you mentioned, is on his first overseas trip. Day one began today. And how else to start the day? Some PT with the troops.
I'm still upright and fairly smoked from this morning. A little PT, but just grateful to be here. Thank you for showing us around, to see UCOM, to see AFRICOM, to see all the supporting staff, and to have some time to spend with all of you, just to break bread and talk about your mission, what you're doing, why you're doing it, what it's all about, and how important it is to us back in Washington, who very eagerly and actively want to get out to the COCOMs and hear from the people actually doing the heavy lifting.
Now, Stuttgart's home to the U.S. military's European and Africa commands. Here's the Defense Secretary at an honor cordon earlier, greeted by the head of U.S. forces in Europe and the Supreme Allied Commander for NATO, General Christopher Cavoli. Now, before touching down in Germany, Hegseth signed a new memorandum aboard a U.S. Air Force C-17, bringing back the name Fort Bragg.
Pursuant to the authority of the Secretary of Defense, Title 10, United States Code, Section 113, I direct the Army to change the name of Fort Liberty, North Carolina, to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. That's right, Bragg is back.
So the name Fort Bragg is back, but with a twist, guys. It will not be named after the former Confederate general. Instead, the new name pays tribute to Private First Class Roland Bragg, a World War II hero who earned the Silver Star and Purple Heart during the Battle of the Bulge. Recall, under then-President Biden, Fort Bragg was changed to the name Fort Liberty. So Defense Secretary Hegseth is wrapping up some morning meetings behind me, or afternoon now behind me, here at the European Command. It was interesting after that honor cordon, guys, he was greeted by some protesters, some family members from some of the service members on the base. They were chanting DEI, guys.
So, really? Lucas, the SecDef, I saw on his Twitter page, did some PT with the soldiers. Did you get in on that action?
Lawrence, I knew you'd ask, and I'd have to come clean. I did not make it, all right? Credit to the Defense Secretary. It was only after a few hours' sleep. He was up and at 'em this morning, but it's a long day for us, so we had to get a little crew rest.
You're
Lawrence,
on a suit and tie mission. I think that the name change, though, Lucas, that you just mentioned, Fort Liberty back to Fort Bragg, is it's so creative, and it really seems like a way of just thumbing their nose into the original name change of going from Fort Bragg to Fort Liberty, which alienated a lot of soldiers. They thought it was a ridiculous thing to do. They're going back to Fort Bragg, but honoring a World War II soldier. I mean, how creative is that?
Very clever is what some people say, Carly. They wanted to bring back Fort Bragg, but there was some concern there might be some pushback going back to Braxton Bragg, the Confederate general. So they found a hero, a Silver Star recipient in World War II at the Battle of the Bulge, Private First Class Roland Bragg. So he will be honored. The name Fort Bragg is back. So now soldiers for decades who have served there can say, I served in Fort Bragg.
Hopefully they kept the old signage.
Yeah, otherwise
pull it out of the garage.
Otherwise, the sign guy's making a fortune.
Hopefully they didn't throw it out.
Exactly. Lucas, just real quick, on another note, I think most of the talk is going to be about Ukraine, right? About the aid. Now it's going to be, I want this aid across. We're going to get into talks, hear what they think the holdup is, and find out what's really going on the battlefield.
Yeah, there's no question, Brian. We've just talked to officials aboard the C-17 here on the ground about the Ukraine aid. We're told the aid to Ukraine is still going. There's something on maybe a decision coming up about another future package. But there's no question at the Munich Security Conference, it's notable that the Defense Secretary is not attending that, but at the Munich Security Conference, where Vice President J.D. Vance will be going later this week here in Germany, there's no question Ukraine is on the table. Ukrainian President Zelensky is going to attend. And the Trump administration, we've heard, they want to end this war. And, remains to be seen how that's going to happen. Remember, Brian, last time there was a Munich agreement, didn't work out so well in history.
Right.
Oh, yes.
No kidding. Hey, before you go, Lucas, from your point in Stuttgart, Germany, while you're there with Pete, the vice president is also in Europe. What's he up to?
Well, he's in Paris, Steve, attending an AI summit. He spoke earlier this morning. He's on his first overseas trip as well. So both the defense secretary and vice president here in Europe. Here's the vice president earlier from Paris on AI.
And before you go, one other thing.
We'll have countless revolutionary applications in economic innovation, job creation, national security, healthcare, free expression, and beyond. I really believe we'll facilitate and make people more productive. It is not going to replace human beings. AI, we believe, is going to make us more productive, more prosperous, and more free.
So again, the vice president coming here to Germany later this week for the Munich Security Conference with Ukraine at the top of the agenda, guys.
All right.
Busy day. Thank you, Lucas.
All right, Lucas.
There's a couple of things with Secretary Hegseth's doing that is exactly why he wanted the job.
Yep.
He wants to find out from people who are actually serving overseas in positions. It's great to get a report from a general, and I'm sure they're competent and good. But when you sit down and talk to people and you say, I'm one of you, about your age, a little bit older, what's happening in the field? Do you feel like the communication's good? What about your families? Are your families, the school's okay with for you people that are going to school on base? And what if they've told you enough advance when they're going to deploy you into Iraq or over to Syria? And if you're going to pull out of Syria, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a trip over there to find out those 900, which is actually 1,700, those 900, in Syria. Like, what kind of threat are you under? Who's going to control that prison of ISIS fighters if we pull out? So instead of getting a report and a promise, he gets to see face-to-face. I think he's going to be so active, that's also going to help the holistic recruiting because you've got a Secretary of Defense who cares about the person.
Well, Brian, I saw that in action with the Secretary of Defense last week. There was many a time that he has the generals in there and he has the rank and file that's in there. He would meet with the generals. Right. They would have classified, unclassified meetings, but then he would kick them out. And he wanted to talk directly with the servicemen and women, E7 and below, so he can get an unfiltered view, and they felt comfortable talking with him. He's there this morning, working out with them. All of this is going to not only boost the morale, but the recruitment as well. And I think that's the big thing. We need more war fighters right now.
Yeah.
Right. And also, remember what Donald Trump ran on and what he talked about around the inauguration. So look for Pete to also discuss with the troops over there the fact that Donald Trump has wanted to reduce our footprint in Europe by 20,000. He wants to bring 20,000 American soldiers home. The other thing is Trump has said in the past that he's going to demand a subsidy from our European partners. In other words, whatever troops are left that work for the United States, the people in Europe are going to have to pay for it. So look for that to be part of the conversation.
Their fair share.
Just to build on what you said. Richard Haas over the weekend, you know, like everyone likes to criticize Trump's unorthodox foreign policy. He said, I like the Europe thing. He said, because the only thing that's going to get them to start spending money on defense is to know that America will not be sitting there watching their back. The other thing you wave in is if Ukraine falls to Russia, we're going to have to put so much more money in to have more troops and more fortifications in around the other NATO neighbors, especially the Baltics. It's going to cost everybody more money. That's why it's important for Ukraine to hold.
Yeah, and on defense spending, that's something that Donald Trump brought up with Bret Baier during their interview. When it comes to Canada, even, he said that Canada spends the lowest amount in NATO in defense spending because they assume that America is going to protect them, which, of course, we would. But he said that's one of the things that grinds his gears and just gets under his skin and says, you got to pay your fair share or become a 51st state, which is very unique.
If he pulls out 20,000, suddenly the Europeans are going, okay, we're going to have to do more. And that's the point.
Poland really wants more troops. They'll even name the base after him.
We like it.
He goes, if you would build a base in Poland, well, name it after you. That's good.
They're smart.
That's a good move.
They understand. They understand who to negotiate with.
It wouldn't be the first Trump name on a building.
He wouldn't have to pay for it.
Overseas in Poland.